Hi, and welcome to the Algebra Word Problems Tutor. And in this class, I'm very excited about teaching this class because up until now in my other courses and in your schoolwork, you've learned how to do algebra. You've learned the mechanics of how to do algebra. You've learned how to solve an equation, how to add negative numbers and positive numbers and things like that. And given a problem, you have the tools in your toolbox to try to be able to solve that kind of problem. But everybody knows that in the real world and also in your test, you're going to be given a certain kind of problem called the word problem, and that makes people sometimes have a hard time. And the reason is because you know your problem is not given to you in a nice one-line fashion. It doesn't just say solve this equation or manipulate this expression. The word problem has a challenge to it because it's a bunch of words and there's numbers in there and Sally and James and different people's names and so on. And your challenge really with those kinds of problems is you have to take the information out of the problem and put it on your board or on your paper, okay? And then cranking through the math usually isn't that hard. Cranking through the math usually isn't that difficult, the actual solving of the problem. The real challenge with the word problem is actually taking the information out of the problem and constructing, your equations or whatever it is you're trying to do on your paper. That's the real challenge. And to be honest with you, that's real life. Real life is not giving you a bunch of one-liner homework problems. Real life is go figure out how to make this airplane fly, or go figure out this engine is running too hot. Go figure out why it's running too hot and fix it. Okay, so what we're going to do in this course is this course is going to be 100% word problems. That's all it is. The actual math behind it, the actual solving the equations isn't going to be that hard, and I did that on purpose. The challenge is taking the word problems and taking that information out and putting it into problem form so you can solve it. That's what we're going to do today. So the first section is algebra word problems involving numbers, okay? Basically these problems are going to have one number relating to another number. Sometimes it's age, sometimes it's distance, things like that. And I think word problems, just like anything else in life, the easiest way to learn how to do them is just to see some examples. So let's go and find those examples. The first problem that we're going to do and talk about is on your board here, and it says on your screen right here, and it says 4 times a number increased by 2 is equal to 30. Okay, what is the number? Okay, the number one thing you need to do when you're solving word problems, any kind of problem that has a sentence involved in it is called a word problem, okay, is you have to understand what it's actually asking you, okay? Number one thing people do is you see a word problem and people start trying to write down answers and numbers and equations without actually understanding what the problem is saying and what it's asking you. You have to do that, okay? So don't try to skip ahead. Read this problem 2 or 3 times until you understand what it's actually asking you to do. Then start writing down your equations and your numbers and so on. So let's read it one more time. 4 times a number increased by 2, okay, is equal to 30. What is that number, okay? So we have a number, that's what we're trying to find, and we multiply it times 4, okay? And then we take that thing and then we add 2 to it, and then the resulting answer should be equal to 30. And what we're trying to do is trying to find that number, okay? So what we're going to do, because we have an unknown here, we have a number, okay? We're going to say that the variable x is equal to the number, okay? The reason I'm doing this is because I really don't know what the number is, okay? That's the whole point. I don't know what the number is, so I'm going to assign a variable to it. And remember, way back to beginning algebra, that's what you're doing here. You don't know what it is, so it's a variable. It's the unknown, so you assign it to be x, okay? So what you want to do is you want to translate this problem into an equation or something you can solve. So 4 times a number increased by 2, okay? Well, if my number is what I'm trying to solve for, then 4 times the number must be 4x. 4 times the number, okay? Increased by 2 means I'm going to add 2 to it. It's got to be equal to 30. Okay, congratulations. You've just translated your first word problem into an equation. 4 times the number increased by 2 is equal to 30. And now all we have to do is solve for our unknown. So to do that, going back to your basic algebra, we'll subtract 2 from both sides. So this 2 will go away. 2 minus 2 is 0. And on the right-hand side, we'll have 30 minus 2. Okay? So all I've done is subtract 2 from the left, gets rid of that 2, and 2 from the right. And I actually haven't done any math yet. So 4x is equal to 28. Okay? And then to solve for x, you divide both sides by 4. So x is going to be equal to 28 divided by 4. So on the left, 4x divided by 4 gives you 1. So that's why you have the 1x there. And 28 divided by 4. So x is going to be equal to 7. Okay? X is going to be equal to 7. Okay, so you see what you did here is you had a word problem that you translated into an equation. 4 times a number plus 2, increased by 2, is equal to 30, and you just used your math to solve that equation, and here's your answer. Now the great thing about word problems, actually the great thing about algebra in general, but especially word problems, is you can always check your work. Okay, always, 100%, almost always you can check your work. Okay, and you should do that with every problem, and it's really easy to do because now that you've figured out what the number is, which we said now it's equal to 7. You want to see if that's the right answer. So that's the great thing. When you're taking a test, you'll always know if it's right. So don't pass up the opportunity to figure out if you did the right thing. So now if your number is equal to 7, which is what we said, let's just read the problem one more time. 4 times a number, okay? 4 times a number. See, now we've figured out what this number is, so let's put it in there. 4 times a number increased by 2. It's got to be equal to 30. Well, let's see what it is equal to. Okay, 7 times 4 is 28, plus 2. We just keep that there because we haven't done anything yet. 28 plus 2 is equal to 30. Okay, so we have done the right thing. We know we have done the right thing because we've done our math, we found our number, and then when we apply the logic back to our number that we found, we get exactly what we should get. Okay? The second problem is a little bit more complicated, but not too much more complicated. We're just going to build in complexity here. Second problem. The sum of two numbers is 30. Okay? And one number is 2 times the other number. What are the two numbers? Or find the two numbers. So again, same thing as before. You have to read the problem, understand the problem, and then start writing stuff down on the paper. Okay? The sum of two numbers. Now remember the word sum. Okay? The word sum is adding two things together. Okay? The sum of two numbers is 30, and one number is 2 times the other number. Find the numbers. Okay? So let's go ahead and just tackle this one step at a time. Okay, now we have two numbers. Okay, we don't have one number, we have two numbers, and you can tell because the problem right there says we have two numbers, so you know this. So we can say that the variable x is equal to number 1, okay, and the variable y is equal to number 2. Okay, now in this problem we know we have to have two numbers because it says right here in the very first sentence, the sum of two numbers is 30. Okay, so you know, and you're trying to find the two numbers, you know you're going to have two variables, and that's what tells you you're going to have two variables right there. So let's go ahead and translate that first sentence. The sum of two numbers, x plus y, that's the sum of these two numbers that we're trying to find, is 30. Okay, so we've already translated that first sentence. And it says, and one number is 2 times the other number. So one number, x, is 2 times the other number. Okay? Find the numbers. That's the last part of the problem there. So we have translated this problem into an equation form. The sum of two numbers is 30, and one number is 2 times the other number. Now notice here we have two equations, two separate equations, and two unknowns, two variables. Now we have enough equations to solve this thing. So how do you think we're going to solve it? Well, what we're going to do is we know what x plus y is 30, and we know what x is equal to. Okay? So we're going to take x and we're going to plug it in here. Okay? So we're going to plug this variable x into this equation. So we'll have 2y plus y is equal to 30. It's very important for you to understand what we did here. We have this equation and we have this equation. Okay? So we're going to take this value for x, which is 2y, and we're going to plug it in here, which is what we've done here. Okay, we're substituting. 2y plus y, just add them together. 3y is equal to 30. And then to solve this equation for y, we just divide both sides by 3. So it's 30 divided by 3. So y is equal to 10. Okay, we are halfway there. We have found one of the problems, which is 10. Okay? Now, how do you think we find the other problem? We have a value for y. How can we find x? Okay? Well, we found this value for y by using both of these equations. We have a nice equation for x. X is equal to 2 times y. So let's use that fact. Okay? And that's going to be a very consistent theme throughout this thing. What you'll do is you'll use two equations to find one variable, and then you'll plug it back in to find the other one. So we'll say x is equal to 2y, which is what we already know. Okay? And then x is equal to 2, and then y is 10, like this. We're just plugging it into y. So x is equal to 20. Okay, now we're done. We've solved it, okay? So let's review what we've done. The sum of two numbers is 30. One number is 2 times the other number, okay? So what we've done is we've taken this second equation, we've plugged it back into the first. 2y plus y is 30. We've solved this by adding these terms and dividing. We've got 10. We take this value for y, we plug it back into one of our original equations. 2 times y, x gives you 20. So we should always check our work. That's really easy to do. So let's check our work. The sum of two numbers is 30. That's what the problem says. These two numbers, if these are the right answers, the sum of them equal 30. That's true. 10 plus 20 is 30. Okay? And one number is 2 times the other number. Well, this number, 20, is 2 times the other number, which is 10. So you see, in this case, we're actually able to check our work and solve our problem just like we said. You write your equation down, right, from your word problem, and then you solve it, and then when you're done, you can always take your answer and figure out if you were right. So that's really comforting on your test to know if you were right, so you can move on to the next problem. Okay, now in the next problem goes something like this. A football team played 16 games and won 4 more games than it lost. How many games did the team win? Okay, so you have to make sure you understand what the problem's saying, so let's read it one more time. A football team played 16 games and won 4 more games than it actually lost. How many games did the team win? Okay, so we have to start somewhere. We know we want to solve for how many games did the team win, so let's write that down. The variable x is equal to the number of games won. That's what we're trying to solve for. So you should always write the variable down and what you're trying to solve for, okay? Because that helps you remember as you're constructing your problem what you're trying to do, okay? So let me go through one little more intermediate step, and we'll continue writing our stuff down, and you'll see why we need to do this. If x is the number of games we won, and if they played 16 games in the whole season, then 16 minus x must be the number of games lost. I mean, just think about this for a second. This isn't rocket science, okay? If you play 10 games in a season and you won 4 games, all we're saying here is that you must have lost 6 games. And using these numbers from this problem, if you played 16 games, okay, and you won X number of games, then you must have lost 16 minus X games because you only played 16 games. So if you won this many, you just subtract to figure out how many you lost. Okay? Okay. Oops. I'll leave that T there. That's all we're doing there. And the reason we're doing that is because, continue reading the problem. Football team played 16 games. They won 4 more games than they lost. Okay? That's important. Okay? And I'm translating that third sentence now, or that second part of the sentence. They won, okay, 4 more games than they lost. Okay? This is how many they lost. Okay? This is how many they lost. We've already figured this out. We're saying that they won 4 more than they lost. Okay, and that's why we needed to do that. Okay, here's how many games we won. This is how many games we lost. I needed to do that because the problem talks about how many games you're losing. Okay, you don't really want to create another variable for how many games you're losing. You could do it, but it's just kind of it's like a detour out this way. You don't really need to do it because you already know that the number of games won and the number of games lost are tied together. okay, right here. So I'm just going to use this fact, okay, to say that this is the number of games lost, and they won 4 more than they lost, okay? And now we're going to solve the equation. So here is an equation here. There's x, there's x. I can solve this equation, okay? So let's do that. So what we have is x is equal to 16 minus x plus 4. I'm just removing the parentheses to make it clear, okay? I'm going to take this x and I'm going to move it over here. So this is minus x. So if I plus x, if I add x here and add x here, I'll get 2x is equal to, and this x just totally disappears from the other side because minus x plus x is 0. 16 plus 4 gives me 20. So x is equal to, and you just divide by 2 on both sides, 20 divided by 2, which is 10. Okay, so we already said that this is the games won. Okay, so we claim that this is the answer. So think about this. A football team played 16 games and won 4 more than it lost. And we know this is how many it lost. Okay? How many games did the team win? And we're claiming that they won 10 games. So let's see if this is the right answer, okay? Let's see. If they won 4 more than they lost, just think about this logically for a second. If they won 4 more than they lost, then if this is the answer, then they must have lost. They must have lost 6 games, okay? Because if they won 4 more than they lost, right? 10 minus 6 is 4. So they won 4 more than they lost. So this has to be how many? Then what you would do there to figure out is this is how many they would have lost. This is how many they would have won. And of course, 10 plus 16, or 10 plus 6, the number of games won plus the number of games lost, is the total number of games. So what you're doing here when you check is you're just making sure that the answer you got makes sense with the word problem that you had. So this is the problem. This is the checking. Okay? Next problem. You have 55 pecans, okay, and they're placed into 2 buckets such that one bucket has 15 more pecans than the other bucket, okay? How many pecans are in each bucket? So again, let's read it one more time. 55 pecans total, and you have 2 buckets in front of you, okay? One bucket has 15 more pecans than the other bucket, and then you're just trying to say, well, how many pecans are in each bucket? Okay, so you know, first of all, let's just think logically. You know you have 2 buckets, and you know you're being asked to find out how many pecans are in each bucket. So you're going to have 2 variables, one for bucket X and one for bucket Y. And you're trying to figure out how many pecans are in each bucket. So you need a variable for each bucket. So what you'll say, you know, and I'll just be cute here and draw a little bucket. X is a bucket. Okay, and here's another bucket over here. And you have the Y bucket. Okay, so we have so many pecans. X is going to be the number of pecans in this first bucket, and Y is going to be the number of pecans in the second bucket. Now let's talk about how they're related. 55 pecans are placed into 2 buckets. Okay, that's enough to start constructing the first thing right there, because it tells you that the number of buckets in the X bucket, the number of pecans in the X bucket, plus the number of pecans in the Y bucket must be equal to 55. The trick here is really to look at every fact in the word problem, okay, and write it down mathematically. If you find a complete statement of fact involving the 2 variables you're trying to solve for, write it down, because every fact is really an equation, okay, and every equation is going to be needed for you to solve the problem. So the number of pecans in X bucket plus the number of pecans in the Y bucket must be equal to 55 pecans because we have 55 pecans to begin with. Okay, second part of the problem. One bucket has 15 more pecans than the other. And it doesn't matter which bucket you choose, okay? It doesn't matter if you choose the X or the Y, but all you know is that one bucket has 15 more pecans than the other bucket, okay? Bucket X has 15 more pecans than bucket Y does, okay? So that's another equation, that's another fact, okay? And then you want to make sure you have enough equations. Two variables, X and Y, 2 equations. You always need to have enough, as many equations as you do variables, okay? Okay, so this is the translation of this problem. Now we can solve it, okay? What we're going to do, we have x plus y is 55, and we have this. We're going to take this expression for x and we're going to plug it right back in there. So let's do that. Y plus 15 plus y is equal to 55. All we've done is we've taken this first equation and we've taken the value for x, which is this, and we've plugged it in there. So y plus 15 plus y is equal to the 55. And now we can solve for y. Okay? Y plus y is 2y equals, and we're going to subtract 15 from both sides. 55 minus 15. So on the left, the 15 goes away. 15 minus 15 is 0. And on the y, 55 minus 15 is what you have here. So 2y is equal to 40. Okay? 2y is equal to 40. And then to solve for y, just divide both sides by 2. 40 divided by 2. So y is just going to be equal to 20. Okay, now we're halfway home because we know how many pecans are in the y bucket. We have 20 pecans over there, but how many are in the x bucket? Okay, so we know that x is equal to y plus 15. We're just using our math. We plug in for y, okay? X is equal to plug in the 20 plus 15, so then x must be equal to 35. Okay. So we've solved the problem. There are 20 pecans in the y bucket and there are 35 pecans in the x bucket. Now let's see if this makes sense. Let's see if we can check this. And you don't have to do a lot of, math. Check it. Just kind of do some math in your head. 55 pecans are placed into two buckets. Well, the first thing to do is make sure that x plus y is equal to 55, okay? Because that's the total number of pecans, right? So 20 plus 35 is equal to 55. Check. So the number of pecans in x plus the number of pecans in y, which is our first equation, by the way, is equal to 55 pecans total. Okay? Second thing to check, does one bucket have 15 more pecans than the other? Well, let's check. 35 minus 20, I think you can convince yourself when you do that math, is equal to 15. So one bucket does have 15 more pecans than the other, and that satisfies our word problem here. So you know that the answer is correct. 20 pecans over here, 35 pecans over here. Okay, the next problem goes something like this. The sum of three consecutive numbers is 39. Find the numbers. Now this problem is a little intimidating when you first look at it because it doesn't look long enough to give you enough information. Let's read it one more time. The sum of three consecutive numbers is 39. Find the numbers. So right off the bat, you have three numbers that you're dealing with, and you're trying to find them. So you're going to have three variables, x, y, and z. That's what I'm going to call them. So let's write that part down. Okay, you have three numbers, okay, that you're trying to solve for. We're going to call them x, y, and z. Okay, x, y, and z. Okay, so those are my three numbers. Okay, and the sum of these numbers, they're consecutive, and we haven't even talked about that yet, but the sum of them is equal to 39. So what that tells you in equation form is x plus y plus z is equal to 39. Okay? X plus y plus z is equal to 39. So this tells you that these three numbers add up to 39, that the sum is 39, but it doesn't tell you anything about being consecutive. So how do we do that part? Okay, what does consecutive mean? Consecutive numbers. It just means that consecutive would mean one more than the last. So 3, 4, and 5 are all consecutive numbers. 6, 7, and 8 are all consecutive numbers. 29, 30, 31, they're all consecutive numbers. What it means is the next number is 1 plus the number before. That's what consecutive means. So let's write this down in equation form. Okay. Consecutive must mean that y, which is this number here, is equal to x plus 1. Okay? And consecutive must also mean that z is equal to y plus 1. Okay? So you see, now I have three equations and three unknowns, which I can solve. All three numbers must be equal to 39, and the numbers are consecutive. And you use your knowledge of what the word consecutive means to figure out that y must be equal to x plus 1, and z must be equal to y plus 1. Okay? So let's go ahead and plug this in. Let's plug in our value for y, and let's plug in our value for z. Okay, so x plus our value for y is x plus 1 Always put it in parentheses so you can keep it straight, okay? Plus z, we're just going to plug in this, which is y plus 1, okay, is equal to 39, okay? And you'll see where we're going to go with this here in just a second. Okay, so now we have an equation here, but this equation still involves x, and this equation still involves y. So you can't really solve this equation by itself because you have two variables in it. But notice we have an expression here for y in terms of x. So if I were to take this expression for y and plug it in here, then this equation would only involve x, and I can solve that, okay? Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and just keep everything the same, x plus 1 plus, okay, now we've come to this y. Y is equal to x plus 1, so let's put it there, x plus 1, and don't forget you had another plus 1 out here, 39. So the only thing we've done different from this line here to the previous line is I've taken this y and I've put in x plus 1 for it. I had to keep this other one here because this is all still here. Everything is still here. I just replaced y with x plus 1. Okay? Now, it looks ugly, but I can actually simplify this. Okay? So let's do this. Let's first just take away all the parentheses, and that'll make things a little bit clearer. X plus 1 plus x plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 39. Again, it looks ugly, but I've just taken the parentheses away. That's all I've done. X plus x gives you 3x plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 gives you 3 is equal to 39. Okay, now it doesn't look so bad. Solving for x, 3x is equal to, and we're going to subtract 3 from both sides, 39 minus 3 gives you 36. All we did was subtract 3 from both sides. Okay, and now we're going to divide by 3. So x is going to be equal to 36 divided by 3. So x is going to be equal to 12. Okay, because 36 divided by 3 gives you 12. Now we're halfway home. Okay, because we already solved one of the equations. Now, moving over here, now that we know this, we know a value for x, we can plug it into here and find what y is equal to. So y is equal to x plus 1. Y is equal to 12 plus 1. We just plugged in our value for x that we have the answer. So y is equal to 13. Okay, and now that we know what y is, we can find z. Z is equal to y plus 1, which is 13 plus 1. Z is equal to 14. Okay, so we have our answers. 12, 13, and 14. First thing to do when you check your work, which is what we're going to do next, is are they consecutive? Yes, they are. 12, 13, 14, they're all consecutive. Okay, and do they add up to 39 is the other part of the problem. They have to all add up to 39. So let's see. 12 plus 13 plus 14. Let's see if these all add up to 39. Okay, 4 plus 3 is 7. Plus 2 is 9. Okay, 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So they do add up to 39. So these are the right numbers. And these are the only right numbers, by the way. There are only 3 consecutive numbers that add up to 39, and these are they. Okay, they add up to 39, and they're all consecutive. We'll do one more problem in this section. Okay, and it goes something like this. Find two numbers whose sum is 25 and whose difference is 11. And you'll see a lot of problems like this. Anything from the SAT to the just your textbook word problems. Find two numbers. So first of all, let's stop right there. You're going to have two numbers you're going to have to find. So we're going to call them x and y, just like before, whose sum is 25 and whose difference is 11. Okay? So again, we'll write down our variables. X is number 1, and y is number 2. Okay. X is number 1, y is number 2. Okay? And we're going to solve for these two numbers. Okay? First thing we're going to do is we're going to say x plus y is equal to 25. So it says the sum of these two numbers must be equal to 25. So that is one statement. So you write that down. Okay? And the difference of these two numbers, difference means subtraction. The difference between two things means you subtract them. X minus y is 11. Now you see this problem looked kind of hard at first, but when you break it down to mathematically it's not that hard. Two simple little equations, two unknowns, so we can solve them. So what we want to do is we want to plug one equation into the other But in order to do that, we need to solve. What we're going to do in this problem is we're going to solve this equation for x, and then we're going to plug it in. Okay? So if we're going to solve this for x, how would we do it? If we're going to take this equation and solve it for x, how would we do it? We're just going to add y to both sides, right? So that's going to be 11 plus y. All we did was we added y to the left, gets rid of this y, 11 plus y on the right. So this equation here that we found, it is the exact same equation as this. I mean, there's no difference between the two. It's just written down differently. Okay? And now we can take this and we can plug it in there and we'll be able to solve. So plugging it in here, 11 plus y is equal to 25. Okay? So now we can solve this equation. All we did was take this that we found, the second equation, and we plugged it back into the first. 11 plus 2y, y plus y gives you 2y, is equal to 25. Okay? Now let's continue solving. We're going to subtract 11 from both sides. So you have 2y is equal to 25 minus 11. Subtract 11 from both sides. So 2y is equal to, and 25 minus 11 is 14. Okay? I think you can convince yourself 25 minus 11 is 14. And then this finally solve for y, you just divide both sides by 2. 14 divided by 2, so y is equal to 7. So we're halfway home, y is equal to 7. Now how do we find x? Well, we have to take this value for y and plug it back into one of the other equations we had. 11 plus y, so x is going to be equal to 11 plus 7. We just take it and plug it back in. X is going to be equal to 11 plus 7 is 18. Okay? So we think we found our two numbers. Okay? Y is equal to 7, just one of the numbers, and the other number is going to be 18. So let's check that out. First, let's see if they add up to 25, because the problem says sum of two numbers must be 25. 18 plus 7, okay, should give you 5, carry the 1, 25. Okay? And the difference between these two numbers should be equal to 11. So let's check this out. 18 minus 7, subtract them, okay? 1, 1, 11. So the sum of these two numbers is 25, and the difference between them is 11. So in this section, we have done word problems that just involve digits. They don't involve anything other than that. You have one number and another number, and they're related by some information. And you just have to practice on taking that information out of the problem, writing it down into your equations so you can solve them.